Hello, everyone. We'll just give it a few seconds to allow participants to join the virtual room. Thanks. Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I am Tara King, Senior Project Director at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS for short. AAAS is the world's largest general science association and the publisher of the Science family of journals. I serve as the Center Coordinator for the S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, which is abbreviated as the S-STEM REC. The AAAS S-STEM REC is happy to organize this virtual webinar facilitated by our REC partner colleagues at the American Institutes for Research, or AIR. And this webinar summarizes the insights from scholars and projects collected in our recently released Outcomes and Impacts report on the S-STEM program. Next slide. As I mentioned, our session objectives today are to disseminate key findings from the Year 3 Outcomes and Impacts report in order to inform you all about the experiences and outcomes of the S-STEM scholars. We also want to highlight effective practices used by S-STEM projects to support S-STEM scholars, including mentoring and advising, cohort-based learning, structured academic supports, and other financial and psychosocial resources. In addition, we want to support evidence-based decision-making through this webinar by sharing data-driven insights that can guide future program improvements and policy within the S-STEM community. So my colleague Jamila just posted in the chat links to the 2025 S-STEM Outcomes and Impact report, which is titled Bridging Potential and Opportunity, the Experiences of S-STEM Scholars, which was put together by our colleagues at AIR, which I will be introducing shortly. We welcome you to download the report if you haven't yet done so. And we also have sharing with you a brief. This is a short summary of the key takeaways and findings of our report, and we encourage you to take a look at that as well. Next slide. I'm going to go over a bit of housekeeping just before we jump into the program. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to write your questions or comments in the chat. And also when we get to Q&A portions of the webinar, and if you wish to speak, you may raise your hand to ask a question. You can use the raise your hand button, and we'll call on you to voice your question. If you're comfortable doing so, we welcome you to turn on your camera. Also, to help us get to know one another and learn what your interests and questions are related to the report, we invite you to please introduce yourself in the chat, write your questions, and anything of interest that you'd like to learn more about related to the report. We're happy to have 2 American Sign Language interpreters joining us today. In addition, we're pleased to have a live transcriptioner providing closed captioning. Our thanks to these individuals for helping us make the information presented today more widely accessible. The slides that we're presenting can be found on the AAAS S-STEM REC website. If you'd like to follow along on your computer, you can download them now. We've just posted a link to the chat to them. And also on the event webpage, a recording of today's webinar will be posted later on when it becomes available. We hope everything runs smoothly for you, but if you have any technical difficulties or questions, please contact my colleague, Jamila Blake, in the chat or send her an email at jblake@AAAS.org. And finally, we really appreciate your feedback on today's session. Toward the end of the webinar, we'll provide a link to a short participant survey. This survey will also pop up when you exit out of Zoom. We thank you so much in advance for taking a minute to complete it to share your feedback. Next slide. One final logistical piece, it's important for me to share a disclaimer with you before we dive in. This material is based upon work supported by the National Science Foundation under grant number 2224093. Any opinions, findings, interpretations, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this material are those of its authors and do not represent the views of the AAAS Board of Directors, the Council of AAAS, AAAS's membership, or the National Science Foundation. Now I'll give a quick snapshot of the AAAS S-STEM REC. So in October 2022, through a competitive proposal process, AAAS received NSF funding to manage the S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, or REC for short. The REC's work focuses on promoting the exchange of ideas, resources, opportunities, and knowledge about effective strategies and practices to increase the number of talented, low-income students who obtain degrees and careers in STEM. So the activities of the REC work across multiple levels to increase the effectiveness of the entire S-STEM portfolio, build the capacity of S-STEM programs, as well as the professional development of S-STEM scholars. We welcome you to visit our website to learn more details and also join our mailing list to stay updated and informed. Next slide, please. So while the REC is managed by AAAS in coordination with NSF, we cannot reach all of our goals without the significant contributions of our full team. So this slide shows all of the organizations we partner with to carry out the work of the REC. And here today, I want to highlight our colleagues at AIR who have coordinated the work to complete the investigation of the S-STEM programs at a portfolio level. And all of this information has gone into our recent report that was released. We're so happy to have them joining us today and facilitating this webinar to share with you the findings, challenges, engage you in discussion about data collection, future report data collection, and engage the community in conversations that will help strengthen S-STEM programs. Next slide, please. So colleagues joining us from AIR today are Elena Sempeles, Amanda Persard, and Joseph Taylor from AIR. They're going to present the information, and then after this, there will be a Q&A. And we're so happy to have them joining us today and collaborating with them on this work to inform the S-STEM community. I'm going to turn it over now to Elena.
Thanks so much, Tara, for getting us started with that great introduction, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Elena Sempeles, the project director for AIR's work on the S-STEM REC. Joining me are Amanda Parsad and Joseph Taylor, co-principal investigators on the project, who lead our evaluation and research synthesis efforts. Together, our team brings deep expertise in STEM education research, evaluation design, and large-scale data collection, all in support of the REC's mission to understand and strengthen the impact of the S-STEM program. Next slide, please. This webinar shares preliminary findings from our interim outcomes and impact report. Our focus is on the strategies S-STEM projects are using to support scholar success, ranging from mentoring and cohort-based learning to financial and psychosocial supports. We'll also highlight key successes and persistent challenges and share how scholar feedback is shaping future improvements. These insights are based on surveys and interviews conducted as part of our ongoing evaluation, and they will help inform the full report to be released in 2027. We hope today's discussion sparks ideas, strengthens support for future data efforts, and provides useful guidance and program improvement and policy decisions across the S-STEM community. Next slide, please. As for our agenda today, we'll walk through the study background and motivation, the study design, key findings, and the implications for future STEM education efforts. We hope this presentation helps raise awareness and engagement with the program and its data collections. Next slide. So now that we've outlined what we'll cover, we're going to begin with a quick overview of the study itself to help ground the rest of the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda to walk us through this section in more detail.
Thank you so much, Elena. So today, first I'll begin with a brief overview of the study, and then in the next few slides, I'll provide the study's research questions, walk you through our data sources and samples, the study measures and analysis we used, along with a few limitations that we want you to keep in mind as we present our key findings today. So next slide. No, oh, actually, stay there. I'm really sorry about that. So this is a 5-year study that examines the experiences and outcomes of STEM scholars, faculty, and institutions. In today's presentations, we'll share interim findings from year 3, which focuses on how projects support scholars, the outcomes scholars experience, the challenges they face, and how projects adapt to meet those challenges. So the study uses a mixed methods design, and it focuses on active STEM awards that began on or before December 31st, 2022, and are expected to end on May 1st, 2024. These dates align with the launch of the REC, and it also allows us to observe the program outcomes for the study. Next slide. Next slide, Jamila. So the study is guided by 4 core research questions that examine the evidence-based practices used by STEM projects to support their scholars, outcomes for scholars, faculty, and institutions that have an STEM award, and the factors that influence those outcomes. The interim report in this presentation focuses on the 3 bolded research questions on your screen, 1, 2, and 4, and they're related to the types of support scholars receive, the outcomes they experience, and the barriers they encounter along the way. Next slide. As we analyze the data to address the core research questions I just showed you for this report, several other questions emerged that helped us to better understand the context behind the outcomes we observed, and they're shown on your screen now. We examined how frequently scholars participated in key evidence-based activities like mentoring, research, and cohort programming. This is to assess their exposure to these core program components. And we also looked at how both scholars and PIs perceive the program's influence on scholar outcomes like academic progress, skill development, and career preparation. Next slide. So to address the research questions and better understand how the STEM program is working and for whom, we drew on multiple data sources. For each data source in the study, the table on your screen provides a sample, the timing of the data collection, and its use in the study. So we conducted scholar interviews at 2 different time points, and these interviews provided invaluable insights into scholars' motivation for participating in STEM, the supports they received from their projects, their experiences, and they also provided program feedback. We also administer surveys to both PIs and scholars to explore the availability of project resources and supports, perceived program impacts, and scholar experiences and outcomes. We also collected program data from PIs, which included scholar demographic and academic information, as well as details on the evidence-based practices being implemented within those STEM projects. Finally, we will do a meta-analysis of STEM project evaluations and related publications, which will allow us to identify broader patterns and assess impacts across the STEM program. Next slide. So to assess the outcomes for scholar, faculty, and institutions, we use multiple measures and data sources. So first, we examine evidence-based practices that are being used in STEM projects, such as mentoring and research opportunities, using faculty surveys and project-level data that we collected. To understand scholar engagement, we looked at how frequently scholars participated in various program activities, and we drew from interviews, survey responses, and project data. To look at perceived impacts of the STEM program, we captured that data through surveys, highlighting reported gains in skills, confidence, career preparation from both scholars and PIs' perspectives. We also looked at institutional and faculty outcomes, which were focused on shifts in teaching practices, collaboration, and support structures for scholars based on PI surveys as well as project data. And finally, we used scholar interviews and surveys to help us identify barriers and facilitators that shape scholars' experiences and influence their outcomes. Next slide, please. Then, to build a deeper understanding of how the S-STEM program is functioning across different contexts, we use a mix of quantitative and qualitative methods to analyze the data we collected. So we use descriptive analyses to help us summarize the type of practices being implemented and how scholars engaged with them. We also use cross-tabulations to explore patterns in outcomes, such as differences based on scholar characteristics or institutional types. We also, using our open-ended survey responses and interviews transcripts, we thematically coded those to surface themes and provide illustrative examples within our report to provide context for our key findings. And we will also conduct a small-scale meta-analysis of existing S-STEM tabulations, evaluations to synthesize outcomes across projects and identify broader trends. Next slides, please. So finally, like in any study, there are a few important limitations that we would like you to keep in mind as we share our key findings. First, much of the data, particularly from surveys, they come from self-reported perceptions from both PIs and scholars, which, as you can imagine, may be influenced by biases like wanting to give the right answer or the desire to be positive and provide positive responses. Also, while responding PIs are generally representative of the broader S-STEM portfolio in terms of institutional and award characteristics, the same cannot be said for scholar respondents. And the reason for this is that there's really no centralized list of all scholars funded by active awards that we were looking at, so it's really hard to know how representative our sample is. This in turn would limit our ability to generalize scholar findings to the full S-STEM population. With that said, I would like to turn the presentation over to my colleague, Joe, who will now present our key findings.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, let's dig into the key findings from the interim report. Collectively, these findings reflect scholar and faculty experiences, program strengths, and areas where improvements might be undertaken. They form the evidence base for our recommendations, and they help us understand how S-STEM is impacting students and institutions. Next slide, please. Okay, as a brief overview, the next set of slides will describe key findings from the report, and these include the wide variety of evidence-based strategies used by S-STEM projects, the positive impacts perceived by scholars on their academic and career outcomes, scholar participation data that highlights mentoring and cohort-based activities as frequent types of engagement. We'll also touch on scholar perceptions of factors that supported and inhibited their outcomes and engagement. And finally, we'll highlight successful project adaptations that were made to meet scholar needs. Next slide, please. Okay. On this slide, we present descriptive information on the frequency of selected strategies used in S-STEM projects. And these are disaggregated by data source, that is, whether we documented the strategy from the project abstract or we collected the information from a PI survey. And that's the blue and green bars. In addition to pointing out some of the most often used strategies, I will elaborate with scholar perceptions of the impact of those strategies. So for example, S-STEM scholars consistently self-reported a wide range of supports that contributed to their academic and personal growth. At the core of these were faculty mentoring and advising, often described as deeply personal and impactful relationships. Scholars also benefited from peer mentoring and cohort-based structures, which helped reduce feelings of isolation and strengthen their sense of community. Next slide, please. Beyond the relational supports, S-STEM projects often provided a suite of co-curricular or extracurricular activities, such as research opportunities, guest lectures, and career counseling. Scholars reported that these resources helped prepare them both for academic success and for long-term career goals. Overall, these integrated supports, curricular and co-curricular, not only improved academic outcomes, but also fostered resilience, leadership, and confidence in their STEM pathways. Next slide, please. Now, let's look a little bit more closely at the scholars' perceptions of impacts. Overall, scholars reported positive impacts from participating in an STEM project. A total of 378 scholars responded to our scholar survey, indicating their level of agreement with statements on a scale that ranged from 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And the STEMs that they were responding to were grouped into 4 themes: academic confidence and support, research and presentation skills, future education and career plans, and social belongingness and social networks. The upshot of this is that scholars strongly agreed that their research and presentation skills improved and that they felt a greater sense of belonging in their academic community. Many also said that their STEM experience helped create valuable social support networks and encouraged them to stay on track in their chosen field. Scholars were slightly less confident in their academic support structures available to them and reported more modest gains in academic confidence. These findings suggest areas of both success and opportunities for growth in the design of STEM program supports. Next slide, please. To better understand scholar participation in STEM program activities, we surveyed 238 PIs from active STEM projects. We asked them about scholar engagement across 5 categories shown in this figure. And from this figure, we see that the PIs most commonly reported frequent scholar participation in both faculty mentoring, 71%, and cohort building activities, 55%. The participation was lower for some of the other categories, such as research opportunities, which brings up the whole idea so that while many STEM projects offered research opportunities, that was a frequent offering, scholar uptake of those research opportunities was modest, suggesting that offering an activity alone is not enough to ensure participation. Next slide, please. Okay, let's pause for a poll. The question we would like you to reflect on is which STEM practice has had the greatest impact on student outcomes at your institution? Take a minute and respond to this poll, please. Looks like most folks have responded, and looks like our poll is somewhat consistent with what we observed and from both project abstracts and PI surveys, is that cohort building activities are a very common practice, and that apparently it's also having an impact at your institution, and mentoring and research opportunities are often frequently used, and it looks like you're reporting that they're used with some success on outcomes. Thank you for that. Let's move along. Okay, let's talk a little bit about facilitators and barriers. With regard to promoting scholar engagement, 3 main facilitators emerged from the scholar interviews: strong peer support, intrinsic motivation to grow and succeed, and faculty mentorship, especially when they were paired with research advising and successful coaching. These types of relationships built community, boosted confidence, and helped scholars stay on track. Next slide, please. Also, according to the scholar interviews, common barriers to engagement included time management challenges, financial constraints, and logistical issues like long commutes. Scholars also describe pressures such as imposter syndrome and academic stress, award visibility and structure, and that's referring to were scholars always aware of all the programmatic activities or resources that they were eligible for, by virtue of being an STEM scholar. So taken collectively, these findings highlight the importance of personalized, visible, and flexible supports to sustain scholar engagement. Next slide, please. Let's hear from you again. From your experience with your project, what do you feel are the biggest barriers that your scholars face? Looks like time management, financials, and psychological and academic pressures right now are neck and neck. Let's give it a few more seconds. And in this poll, we're forcing your response into these, 5 categories. Maybe in the Q&A, if your scholars face other barriers that we don't have listed, it'd be interesting to hear what some of those others might be. But just at the highest level, it looks like the barriers that your scholars face are much like what we found in our other data collection efforts. Okay, let's move on to our last key finding, and that's related to adaptations. According to scholar interviews, STEM projects showed very strong adaptability to their needs. Faculty and staff adjusted schedules, offered hybrid and flexible options, all to accommodate work and class demands. Scholars received individualized support, including faculty mentorship, academic tracking, success coaching, and help with transportation or funding needs. And probably even more importantly, STEM projects consistently and actively sought out scholar feedback through surveys, focus groups, direct dialogue, and they used that information to refine how support was offered, making the programs more responsive and effective. These adaptations were key to keeping scholars engaged and successful. And let's move to our final poll. Okay. How do you currently approach collecting and using scholar feedback to improve your program? We'd like to hear from you. So it looks like identification and addressing scholar needs or concerns is a common use, slightly ahead of informing program design or changes. I would say the general notion of using data, right, to inform the program is something that's happening in our webinar attendees as well as the larger PI population, at least those that responded to our data collection protocols. Thank you for sharing your current practices in this domain. Okay, I am going to turn it over back to Elena for implications and recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe, for walking us through those key findings. There is a lot of valuable insight there. So now I'll take a few minutes to talk through what these findings mean in terms of implications and recommendations. We'll look at how the data can inform ongoing program improvements and highlight areas where additional support or attention may be needed. Next slide, please. First, we recommend continuing scholar-centered flexible supports. Both scholars and PIs emphasize that flexibility around work, school, and personal responsibilities is essential for helping scholars persist in STEM. Second, projects should sustain structured mentoring and peer networks. Scholars consistently pointed to mentoring and a sense of community as key supports, and PIs echoed this, highlighting its role in fostering belonging and confidence. Third, programs should prioritize early and structured access to co-curricular and research opportunities. Scholars in newer projects often had limited exposure to these experiences, while PIs stressed the value of integrating them throughout the scholar journey, not just at the end. And finally, we recommend formalizing feedback loops. Projects that regularly collected and applied scholar input were better able to respond to evolving needs and improve over time. Next slide, please. So this now brings us to the discussion portion of our presentation. This next section is a chance for us to hear from you and engage in some discussion around the findings we just shared. So with that, we'd like to open the floor for your questions and reflections. We're especially interested in how these findings resonate with your institutional experiences and how they might inform future S-STEM efforts. We also welcome your thoughts on areas that may deserve deeper exploration as we continue this work. Perhaps you could drop in the chat, maybe what's one change you are considering making to your S-STEM program after today?
I can go if no one else wants to. So I'm gonna go for the project I'm returning to. So I'm even while I was at the NSF, I got to be the educational researcher, and I did some interviews with our students, and a number of them said that they were lost in the sauce. Like they had a great bridge and a great introduction, and then they felt like during the academic year, other than their mentor, they didn't really feel that connection and they were lost. And so it resonates exactly with the report that you were saying, and that just to make sure that we're doing those tie-ins throughout the year, not just hit them hard with, say, a bridge program, but making sure we're supporting them throughout. And so that's something that upon analysis, I shared with the team, and they're changing the structure for this year to make sure that we're not losing those students. So that's something I will share that was a challenge for our track too.
Thank you, Olivia.
I guess I have an observation from our scholars. Many of them transfer from community college to a four-year institution, and they discover that courses are only offered in the middle of the day, for example, and they're used to working during the day and taking classes at night. And so that's something as an institution we struggle with. It's not something that I can change from a program point of view, but as an institution, we're trying to provide feedback that we should try and offer more evening lab sections, for example, to accommodate these transfer students. So that's a big push. It's something that's going to take a while, but I think it's our job, to advocate for these students that we want to retain.
That's really good feedback. Thank you.
Well, our data would suggest that when those types of flexible adaptations are made, that the scholars do appreciate it, and they link it to helping them get through.
And I also see some great suggestions or input in the chat. For example, sort of adding more cohort building activities, also generating intake checklists for students to complete, and about availability of opportunities that scholars can participate in. Those are all really great ideas. Engagement in the summer and summer orientation, like just ensuring that there's engagement at the start and throughout. Joe, there's a question for us here. So were there any differences or patterns between the award tracks or institutional characteristics for some of the outcomes we observed?
We haven't yet disaggregated by track, but that is one thing that's on the table for the final report. So thank you for that suggestion. I think that would be a meaningful way to disaggregate the data.
And I know Sarah May and Kyle and others from our teams also here. There's a question on whether or not I'm sorry, I just lost it, but I'm going to try to find it back. Why students are not accessing research opportunities, and if there's any thoughts on that.
Sure. I'm not sure I'm seeing the question. I think you're only receiving it. But good afternoon, everyone. One of the reasons why some scholars are not accessing the opportunities offered to them through their program is lack of awareness. And so communicating better that these opportunities are available to them to support their academic journey would be beneficial to them.
Thank you, Sarah May. Sarah May is our qualitative lead on our team, so she has intimate knowledge of these.
And Sarah May, there's just a follow-up to that, just aside from awareness, are faculty encouraging their students to participate, or others encouraging their students to participate in different research opportunities? I know one of the suggestions here is just time, right? Time is always a challenge for students to participate in like their regular requirements for school, their work requirements, as well as the research activities. I know that's definitely a bar that's surfaced in our work. And I think, go ahead, Sarah, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, in addition to awareness, of course, as you could imagine, time management always comes up, given that the scholars are balancing their academic journey. Some of them are still working despite the financial assistance that they're receiving through this program. And so they have to kind of prioritize they're maintaining a GPA, for example, to keep the scholarship rather than engaging in research opportunities.
And for everyone in the call, there's a question from Sarah on sort of for the team building or cohort building activities, which ones in your experience have worked well or is well attended? And do like the timing of it, is it during the week, the school day, on the weekends, sort of what really works for attendance? Any ideas or thoughts from everyone here?
I know what worked for us is, again, our bridge program. So we started off strong for that cohort and did a team building that they loved. And then during the holiday, we had a holiday reindeer games. So simple. Faculty played, students played, and it was just another opportunity. And then once that got around that we had like played reindeer games, then the next couple cohorting building were well attended. So it was like make sure that there are some fun stuff in addition to academic stuff and make them have those connections. And that helped a lot for us.
Can I ask what your reindeer games were? I'm fascinated.
Minute to win it games. So we had like tissue boxes wrapped like presents and we had to jingle like bells with our butts to get them out. That was by far the favorite. All of us faculty members trying to jingle bells out of our rear ends, hands down, united. But each faculty picked a different reindeer game and then we hosted it with our students. And then we also had faculty teams, like their mentors came and those of us running the grants. And like I said, it's been well received. And so when they find those types of things, then it's easier to get them to other more academic ones because they already see the value of getting together.
And always a crowd favorite. I see in the chat, students love when you bring potluck or food to any event. So any event around food is always a good thing. Did anyone go ahead? I'm sorry.
It was just a thank you.
Of course. I was going to ask whether or not any of our results or findings sort of did not resonate with you or you found surprising. I mean, our polls sort of or even our live polls really aligned well with our results. So that was really good to see, given our concerns about just getting more people to participate. So thank you all for helping us in that way. Ellen, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's really great to hear in the chat, what has been working, what could be improved upon. I am curious about the social events that are held. If anyone has had issues with their scholars not being able to get to those activities that might be outside of their, some may live far away from the campus. I'm curious to hear if that has been a barrier for your scholars. I do actually see a question in the chat here. What does structured mentoring mean? Is it typically a certain number of meetings with mentors throughout the semester? I would actually like to see if what others describe that in their projects. What does the structured mentoring mean to them and how they implement those?
Can respond, Elena, from the perspective of the scholars with whom we spoke. So they've described mentoring in very different ways. Some were faculty mentoring that had kind of regular touch points, but the mentors remained accessible and visible to scholars as needed. But there were also scholars who talked about their experience with peer mentors. So mentors in the same program who have been part of S-STEM for longer than they have, mentoring newer scholars. And they, you know, for those who have experienced peer mentorship, either as a mentor or as a mentee, it was, you know, they described it as quite beneficial overall. And some of them even hoped that they could, you know, even after graduating from the program, that they would be involved in sort of like an alumni capacity to continue mentoring or to continue these relationships and connections that they've built, not only with their faculty mentor, but also their peer mentors.
Thank you, Sarah May. And I'm seeing a couple comments here about, you know, mixed results with the social activities, but that's really great to hear that, you know, some can bring their children or family members as a way to better be able to attend. That's really great to hear, to make that flexible so that people can come to these events. Yes, I'm seeing, you know, evenings are tough given that most scholars still work and have outside obligations. But yes, offering that noon hour is a great way to be able to get people on campus when they're available. These are all great suggestions that other projects could also take on.
I'll just add, we're relatively rural. And so if we bring like outside speakers, sometimes it's hard for them to actually get to our campus. So if they're virtual, why not let our students be virtual? So we'll host like a viewing party where they can be in person with us or they can attend online. And those are our most attended events because
Yeah, that definitely makes sense and helps with the flexibility there for these hybrid events. Thanks for sharing. Are there any other thoughts or suggestions that anyone in the group would like to share that could be helpful to other projects? I see a question here asking to share more about the virtual activities or the viewing party and how you are engaging the scholars in that format.
yeah, so we do it via Zoom. We, especially since COVID, we have our campus is set up to have kind of that hybrid aspect of it. And then we actually have either one of the faculty or one of our peer mentors monitor the chat and engage people in the chat while the presentation's going on. So oftentimes they'll like tag in a question that they thought of, or specifically, like if we are having discussions, they'll do it in breakout rooms. So it's really about making sure that the virtual participants are still active participants. But we also let our scholars know that sometimes if all you can do is listen, because life be lifing, then we'd rather you have and just listen. And so just let us know if you can't actively engage. So we don't hold it against them if like life is happening around them. We're just excited that they're there. And so because they know of that flexibility, I think they're even more likely to attend because they know that they won't be like penalized if they're not the most active person. But it's nice to just have them there. And so, and the more they attend, then the more active they become over time. But it does take time. Hope that helped.
Thanks so much for sharing. Okay, well, with our last few minutes here, we will go ahead and get to our next steps in wrapping up. So this will bring us to the end of our discussion portion of our presentation. I just want to thank you all for sharing your reflections and questions. It's incredibly valuable to hear how these findings connect to your experiences. And to close out today's session, we'll walk through a few next steps and reminders about how you can stay involved as the study continues. Next slide, please. So as we wrap up, we want to emphasize why your participation is so important. The data you share directly informs national strategies to advance equity in STEM and helps us understand which practices are most effective and for which scholars. We're gearing up for year 4 data collection, which includes the 2026 PI and scholar surveys, as well as a new round of qualitative interviews with scholars. These efforts will build on what we've learned so far and help us deepen our understanding of scholar experiences and outcomes. There are 2 key ways you can get involved right now. First, AIR is collecting data on S-STEM projects and scholars from the 2024-25 academic year. Since NSF can't share this data directly, AIR is reaching out to individual PIs. A reminder email was sent earlier today from stemstudy@air.org requesting project and scholar information. This effort is approved by NSF, the S-STEM REC, and AAAS, and you're encouraged to share your data. If you didn't receive the email, please check your spam folder or follow up with your NSF program officer. Second, we're continuing our meta-analysis of published and unpublished evaluation reports. We're interested in collecting materials from S-STEM PIs and evaluators to help synthesize evidence of program effectiveness across projects. AAAS will follow up after the webinar with information about what types of reports are most useful and how to submit them. But if you're ready to upload some materials now, the link to the shared folder is on the slide. Thank you all again for your continued partnership and for helping us strengthen the S-STEM community. With that, I'll turn it back over to Tara to close us out.
Thank you so much, Elena, Amanda, and Joe. We really appreciate your partnership in this very large effort to collect important information about how S-STEM programs are doing wonderful work to support S-STEM scholars throughout the country. Thank everybody for participating today. Just a reminder for you all to take a short survey to provide your feedback on today's session. Additionally, we'll be following up, as Elena said, with an email to everyone that will include the link to submit an evaluation report again, because just want to emphasize that we're really asking for your help in collecting really important data from you directly so that we can have a better picture of the S-STEM program's outcomes and impacts throughout the country. Thank you so much for your collaboration in our work on this front. So Thank you. Please stay connected with the S-STEM REC. Here on this slide, we have our website, our mailing list. Please follow us on LinkedIn and join us on Blue Sky. Additionally, we have 2 upcoming webinars that you might be interested in. They are on addressing small sample sizes and NSF S-STEM evaluations. They're going to be taking place August 26th and September 3rd. It's a 2-part series. If you go to our website, you can find a link to register for those as well. So we really hope to see you at future virtual events and webinars that we host. And thank you so much for attending, and a big thank you again to our colleagues at AAR.